know we all have a responsibility to get this deficit under control. We all do. But remember, Social Security didn't cause one dime of that deficit. Not one dime caused by Social Security. So when we start looking for how we're going to deal with this deficit, let's look at it from a point of view of fairness to the American people. And look, I'm not here to convince any of you that this budget agreement is a great thing. I'm not. But I want to tell you what's in the budget agreement so you understand what's in there. And we start off with $1 trillion of cuts over the next 10 years. Well, what does that translate to in the budget? We're now talking about, there's two parts of the budget. One is our discretionary spending. The other is our mandatory spending. And in our discretionary spending, there are programs you should be concerned about. There's programs that deal with our seniors that are in our discretionary program. There are programs that deal with nutrition in our programs. And I know you're concerned about what's happening with Head Start, with children, what's happening with Pell Grants, so families can afford a college education. I know you're all interested in that. And that's in the discretionary budget. The House sent us over a budget that cut discretionary domestic spending by almost 13%. That means we would have had to cut children off of Head Start, we would have had to reduce Pell Grants, and we would have had a hard time dealing with the programs that support our senior centers. The compromise agreement that we agreed to this past week cuts domestic discretionary spending by less than 1% in FY12. We held the line so that we can move forward. But now there's a second round of cuts that are coming. The second round of cuts are going to come on the recommendations of a joint committee. We don't know what they're going to recommend. We don't know whether we'll support it or not support it. And they can consider anything. We'll have to wait and see. If they fail, they're not able to get the cuts enacted into law, then we have automatic cuts across the board. I'm not for that. I think automatic cuts are the wrong way to go. Congress needs to pass appropriation bills and needs to pass bills and set priorities. So I'm not for across-the-board cuts. But understand these across-the-board cuts would be half on the military side and half on the domestic side. So it's spread across the entire budget, including our military and domestic. But we protected the programs that are critically important that we could not allow for across-the-board cuts. We protected Social Security. No cuts across the board on Social Security. We protected Medicaid. No cuts across the board on Medicaid. We protected the low-income programs. No cut across the board on mandatory low-income programs. We protected the federal worker pensions. No cuts to the pensions for our retirees. And we protected Medicare beneficiaries. No cuts across the board for Medicare beneficiaries. That's what's in this agreement. I don't want to see sequestration, even though our key programs are protected. I don't want to see that happen. But I want to see a fair agreement to deal with our deficit. And a fair agreement means that those who have benefited from us going into these deficits, those who have benefited the most from these tax cuts, it's time that our high income, our wealthy, our millionaires and billionaires start paying a little bit towards dealing with this deficit. Let's put revenue on the table. And it's time to eliminate these loopholes in our tax code. Ethanol subsidy, ridiculous. Gas and oil companies get a tax break for manufacturing a product that's supposed to be exported. That's where that tax break came from. They don't deserve that. They don't export a product. It's time to get rid of these subsidies. And that's what we're fighting for. So I came here today, maybe to celebrate. Birthdays are fun. I see cake. I haven't had a cupcake for a while. I want you to know that. And I know you're not feeling sorry for us for how we acted in Washington. No one should feel sorry for us. But it's nice to be back in the real world community with people who really understand. So I'm here today basically to say thank you. Thank you for being willing to get involved. I can tell you that we're going to do everything we can to continue to make America the strongest nation in the world. You know how you do that? Create more jobs. Create more jobs. Too many people want to work and don't have jobs. Say something else. We create more jobs. Guess what it does with the deficit? Brings the deficit down. More taxpayers. More revenue coming in. Creating economic opportunity and hope. That's what we have to do. We've got to work together to create the economic climate for job growth in this country. So I've already been talking to my Senate colleagues since we passed the budget agreement. Talked to them about bringing out appropriation bills that we now can bring out. We've reached agreement on them. But I want them focused on job growth. So let's look at our appropriation bills and to see how we can create more jobs through the monies that we can appropriate on an annual basis.